everybody, to the from the Inspire Shop. Welcome to week 3 of our Identity Loved Creative Bible Study. This week our theme is God's promises. So we have been talking about love for the last few weeks and what that looks like, how we define it, and how God's love defines us. One of my favorite verses for love is from Jeremiah 31:3. It says, "I have loved you with an everlasting love." And this is what God is saying to his people, Israel. And the thing that I love about this verse is that God is proclaiming this after the Israelites have gone into exile. In Jeremiah 7, we see all of the sins that they have committed. They have stolen, they have worshiped Baal, other gods. They have just mistreated each other. They've gone after the lust of their eyes. They've been getting drunk on wine. They've done all of these things. And yet God says, "I have loved you with an everlasting love." Despite what they have done, despite all of his warnings, despite everything that he has told them, and they turn their backs on him, God still loved them. And so we think about everlasting. It's this everlasting love that's going to make this eternal, never-ending kind of love. When we think about romance, it's not like till death do us part, until things get hard kind of thing. It's like forever and ever. God loves us no matter what. And when we start believing in that, when we start living in a place where the love of God is what defines us, then we can live in a place where it doesn't matter what people say about us. It doesn't matter our circumstances, because we are secure in knowing how much God loves us. My husband and I were foster parents. We adopted our 2 youngest through foster care. And so much of our training was talking about love and being able to love our child no matter what they do, because of all the circumstances that they had been through. Their behavior didn't necessarily reflect who they were, right? It was because of the things that they'd experienced in the past. And so children, when they come from a lot of trauma, they're going to act out. There's going to be behaviors that they do that aren't who they are, but it's what they've learned and had to do. And so as a foster parent, it's so important to be able to stay calm and be able to be the baseline for them when they are getting flared up and angry, to be able to hold it together and know that their outburst isn't because of anything that you've done necessarily, but because of what they've done in the past. And so when we think about our relationship with God, right? God is there. He's his baseline. He knows that things have happened to us, and he still loves us. And he is giving us grace and allowing us to move forward and showing us how to love, because he's loving us with that never-ending love despite our circumstances. And as his love gives us that security, which is, as a foster parent, that is one thing that is huge. We want to be a place of security for a child who has had a lot of trauma. And so as they are shown love unconditionally, then they're allowed to have that attachment. They're making attachment because they are seeing that you are a safe place. And so as we get to know God, as we get to see him move, as we trust him and we see how much he loves us, he becomes our safe place. He becomes that stronghold in our life, as we talked about last week, and we are able to love out of that place of not worrying about anything else that matters or anything that has happened to us in the past or people have said about us. Because the truth of God's love is able to stabilize us as we are in his strongholds. And so this week, as we talk about just God's promises, right? He promises to restore Israel after all of the things that they have done, after they have turned their backs on him. He has that everlasting love. He's still that basis because God does not change. So he is loving them and he's disciplining them, as we see in Jeremiah 31, if you read the whole thing, right? But he's promising that he loves them, and so he's disciplining them, right? A good parent is going to discipline their child in order to help them to grow and to be helpful and So God disciplines Israel, but he also promises that he's going to turn their mourning into joy. And he has all these different promises in there, if you've got a chance to read that. And so as we think about where we are in our identity with Christ this week, how has our thoughts, how do they reflect God, and how do his promises affect us, right? How are we allowing them to really sink in to who we are? So this week, as we just go out, I pray that you would just seek God in that area. You know, how have you allowed him to be your stronghold? How have you seen him move when you have turned away from God? That he's still been faithful, right? You might be disciplined. You might suffer consequences for your actions that you have done in the past, for past sin, right? But God is still faithful through that. And as you turn back to him, he'll be faithful to fulfill his promises that he has spoken over our lives. And I pray that this week you just take time to kind of see the Lord in that, and how he has been faithful, and how his love defines you. And if it doesn't, I just challenge you to see why not. Have a great week. Cheers.